The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. Ambassador. Lena Vasquez was drinking her third cup of coffee when her assistant burst through the door without knocking. The young man was pale, his hands shaking as he held out a tablet. Alina took it, read the first 3 lines, and forgot how to breathe. The Galactic Council had summoned Earth to speak. For 30 years, humanity had known it was not alone. First contact had been awkward, confusing, and terrifying in equal measure. The Velthri had appeared in Earth's orbit without warning, their crystalline ships hanging in the sky like frozen lightning. They had studied humanity for 6 months before making contact. And when they finally spoke, their message was simple. You are young. You are primitive. You are not ready, but we will watch. And watch they did. The elder races of the galaxy sent observers, traders, and scientists. They shared small pieces of technology, enough to help humanity take its first steps into the stars, but never enough to make them equals. Humanity was treated like a child at an adult's table, tolerated but not taken seriously. But now, finally, Earth had been invited to address the full council. Every government on the planet scrambled to prepare. Alina was chosen to lead the delegation because she had spent 15 years studying alien cultures and spoke for non-human languages. She was calm under pressure, brilliant in negotiation, and genuinely believed that humanity had something to offer the galaxy. She had no idea what was waiting for her. The journey to the Citadel of Voices took 3 weeks. Alina spent every waking hour preparing her speech, practicing her delivery, and studying the protocols of council address. Her team of 12 worked around the clock, preparing cultural gifts, trade proposals, and scientific presentations. They wanted to show the galaxy that humanity was ready to be a partner, not just a student. When their ship finally emerged from hyperspace and the Citadel came into view, Lena felt tears prick her eyes. The station was enormous, larger than Earth's moon. A perfect sphere of gleaming metal and crystal that had existed for 12,000 years. Inside its walls, the fate of civilizations had been decided. Wars had been prevented. Alliances had been forged. And now, humanity would finally have its voice heard. The delegation was escorted through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were lined with monuments to species that had risen, flourished, and sometimes fallen. Some of the names were familiar from humanity's studies. Others were mysteries. Civilizations so ancient that even the elder races had forgotten their stories. The council chamber itself was overwhelming. It was a vast amphitheater, capable of holding thousands, with platforms rising in concentric circles around a central stage. Each platform bore the symbols of a different species. Alina counted over 800 before she lost track. 800 civilizations, watching as humanity took its first real step onto the galactic stage. She walked to the podium at the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. 2,000 pairs of eyes, some familiar, some utterly alien, fixed upon her. She could feel the weight of their attention, the judgment in their gazes. Alina took a deep breath and began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "On behalf of Earth and all of humanity, I thank you for this opportunity. We come before you not as conquerors or supplicants, but as fellow travelers in this vast universe. We believe that humanity has much to offer and much to learn. We seek partnership, cooperation, and mutual growth." She paused, waiting for the translation systems to carry her words to every delegate. The response was not what she expected. Laughter. It started with the Velthri delegate, being of living light who had observed humanity's first fumbling steps into space. The sound was like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and cutting at the same time. "Forgive me," the Velthri said, its voice carrying through the chamber. "But you speak of contribution. Your species has existed for the blink of an eye. You have not yet mastered fusion without waste. You war among yourselves over patches of dirt. What could you possibly offer us?" The laughter spread. Some delegates tried to hide their amusement, covering their mouths or turning away. Others did not bother with such politeness. The sound washed over Alina like a wave of cold water, drowning the words she had prepared, the hopes she had carried across the stars. Behind her, she could hear her team shifting uncomfortably. One of them let out a small sound of distress. Alina knew that every word of this was being broadcast back to Earth. Billions of people were watching their species be treated like a joke. The Dominion speaker, an ancient being whose species had helped found the Council 10,000 years ago, raised a limb for silence. The laughter faded slowly, reluctantly. Perhaps the speaker said, its tone not unkind but deeply condescending, humanity should observe for a few centuries before speaking. Learn what it means to be part of something greater. There is no shame in youth, Ambassador, only in overreaching. Alina stood frozen at the podium. Her prepared speech felt like ashes in her mouth. Everything humanity had worked for, the decades of preparation, the careful diplomacy, the hopes of billions, was being dismissed as the foolish ambition of children who did not know their place. She should have thanked them for their guidance. She should have stepped back, accepted her people's status as observers, and worked quietly for the centuries of acceptance the elder races expected. But Lena Vasquez had not come this far by accepting what others expected of her. She looked at the microphone before her. It was still active, still broadcasting to every corner of known space. Her hands had been trembling, but now they were steady. A strange calm settled over her. The calm that comes when someone realizes they have nothing left to lose, no, she said. The single word cut through the residual chuckling like a blade. 2,000 delegates fell silent, staring at the small human who had not retreated from the podium. Alina gripped the edges of the lectern and leaned forward. Her eyes swept across the chamber, meeting the gazes of beings who had watched stars be born and die. No, she repeated, I will not step back. I will not be silent. And I will not wait centuries for permission to speak. The chamber was utterly quiet now. Even the Velthary had stopped shimmering. You wanted to know what humanity has to offer? Alina said. Then listen, because I'm going to tell you exactly who we are. Alina Vasquez stood at the podium, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The laughter had stopped. 2,000 alien delegates stared at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outrage. She had just refused to step down, refused to be silent, refused to accept humanity's place as cosmic children. Now she had to prove that refusal meant something. You are right about one thing, she began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. We are young. By your standards, humanity is barely a heartbeat old. You have watched empires rise and fall while we were still learning to make fire. I do not deny this. She paused, letting the translation systems catch up, letting her words sink into minds that had seen millennia pass like seasons. But let me tell you what we did with that heartbeat. Alina pressed a control on the podium, and a holographic display flickered to life above her. Images began to cascade through the air, simple at first, then growing more complex. 300,000 years ago, my ancestors looked up at the stars and wondered. They had no technology, no writing, no cities. They had only their minds and their questions. And they never stopped asking those questions. The display showed early humans gathered around fires, their eyes turned upward, toward a night sky full of mysteries. We built civilizations from nothing, not once, but dozens of times. When one fell, we built another. When disease killed half of us, the survivors got up and kept going. When we ran out of food, we learned to grow it. When we ran out of land, we crossed oceans. And when we ran out of oceans, we looked up at those stars again. Elena's voice grew stronger with each sentence. She was no longer reciting a prepared speech. She was telling a story, the story of her people, and she meant every word. You gave us scraps of technology and expected us to spend centuries understanding them. That is what your species did, after all. Slow, careful progress. Methodical advancement. But we are not like you. She pulled up new images. The first powered flight, a fragile machine of wood and cloth lifting off from a sandy beach. The mushroom cloud of the first atomic bomb, terrible and awe-inspiring. The first human footprints on the moon pressed into gray dust, just 66 years after that first flight. From first flight to walking on another world in a single human lifetime, 66 years. Many of you have individual cells older than that span of time. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates were calculating, comparing humanity's pace of development to their own ancient histories. You shared your faster-than-light technology with us as a gesture of goodwill. Your scientists estimated it would take humanity 200 years to reverse engineer it, if we ever succeeded at all. We did it in 11. Now the murmur became louder. Several delegates leaned forward in their seats, suddenly paying closer attention. Your medical nanites. The technology your species developed over 3,000 years of careful research. We adapted to human biology in 6 years. It's not because we are smarter than you, not because we are better, but because we have something you lost a long time ago. Alina looked directly at the Velthari delegate, whose crystalline form had dimmed with what might have been surprise. We are still desperate, she said. Every generation of humanity has lived knowing they might be the last. We have never had the luxury of patience. We have never had the comfort of knowing we would survive. Every day of human existence has been a fight against extinction, and that fight has made us what we are. She stepped around the podium, moving closer to the assembled delegates, her small human form defiant against the backdrop of ancient power. You call our wars a weakness. Call them a forge. Yes, we have killed each other. We have done terrible things in the name of nation, religion, and ideology. But those conflicts also drove us forward. They pushed us to innovate, to adapt, to overcome. The same species that split the atom in a bomb also used that knowledge to power cities and heal the sick. Alina raised her hand, and the holographic display showed images of human achievement, medical breakthroughs, artistic masterpieces, acts of courage and compassion that defied logic and self-interest. When strangers are in need, we help them, even at cost to ourselves. When we are told something is impossible, we take it as a challenge. This is not arrogance. It is who we are. We cannot stop striving, cannot stop reaching, cannot stop dreaming of what lies beyond the next horizon. The chamber was silent now, but it was a different kind of silence. The mockery had faded, replaced by something else. Attention, interest, perhaps even respect. You have spent 12,000 years building this council, Alina continued. You have created peace and stability across the galaxy. These are great achievements, and humanity does not seek to diminish them. But somewhere along the way, you forgot what it was like to be hungry. Forgot the desperate drive that pushed your own ancestors to reach for the stars. She walked back to the podium and gripped its edges once more. We have not forgotten. We cannot forget. And that is what humanity offers this council. Not technology you do not need, not wisdom you already possess. We offer you our fire, our restlessness, our absolute refusal to accept that anything is impossible. Alina looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. You laughed at us because we are young. But every ancient species was young once. Every great civilization started with a single step into the unknown. We are taking that step now, and we will not stop. You can stand beside us and see where the journey leads, or you can stand aside and watch. But you will not laugh at us again. She fell silent. The holographic display faded. Alina stood alone at the center of the chamber, a single human against the weight of galactic history. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched, growing heavier with each passing second. Alina could feel sweat running down her back, could hear her own breathing loud in her ears. Then, from the highest tier of the chamber, a sound broke the quiet. It's not laughter this time, but something else. A slow, rhythmic beating. One of the Kethri delegates, a massive warrior encased in chitinous armor, was striking his forelimbs together in what could only be applause. Another delegate joined. Then another. Within moments, a wave of acknowledgement swept through the chamber. Not from everyone, certainly not from the eldest and proudest species, but from enough. From dozens of civilizations who had also been young ones, who remembered what it was like to be dismissed and underestimated. Alina Vasquez did not smile. She did not bow. Simply stood, straight and still, as the sound washed over her. Humanity had spoken. Now the galaxy would have to decide what to do about it. The applause had barely faded when a new voice cut through the chamber. It was deep and rough, like stones grinding together in a mountain's heart. Every delegate fell silent instantly. High Commander Vorath of the Cathari hegemony rose from his platform. He was enormous, standing nearly 3 meters tall, his body covered in armored plates that had evolved over millions of years to withstand the harshest environments in the galaxy. The Cathari were warriors, the most feared military force in known space. When Vorath spoke, civilizations listened. "Pretty words," Vorath said, his compound eyes fixed on Alina. "Your ambassador speaks well, but words are nothing more than air shaped by intention. Any creature can speak. What matters is what you do." They valued strength, action, and proof above all else. Vorath was not insulting her. He was testing her, humanity claims. "To be forged in struggle," Vorath continued. "Then prove it." One invoked the crucible. Collective gasps swept through the chamber. Alina saw her team's faces go pale. Even the most ancient delegates seemed shocked. The crucible was an old tradition dating back to the earliest days of the Council. It was a trial of combat, intellect, and endurance, used to settle disputes between species when words alone could not suffice. It had not been invoked in over 400 years. "High Commander," the Dominion speaker interjected, "the crucible is meant for established species. Humanity has not yet proven itself worthy of such a trial." "That is exactly the point," Vorath replied. "Let them prove themselves now, or admit they are what everyone believes them to be." Talking animals who do not deserve a seat at this table, Alina felt her team's eyes on her. Marcus Cole, her military advisor, was already calculating odds. The Cathari were apex predators. Their reflexes were 3 times faster than human baseline. Their strength was legendary. In direct combat, no human could survive. But Alina understood something her team did not. This was not about winning. It was about showing up. "Humanity accepts the crucible," she said. The chamber erupted into noise. Some delegates protested. Others cheered. Vorath simply nodded, a gesture that might have been respect. "3 days from now," he said, "we will see what your hunger truly means." The crucible took place in an arena specifically designed for such trials. It was vast and empty, surrounded by observation platforms where thousands of delegates had gathered to watch. The trial was being broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings would witness what happened next. The first trial was strategy. Alina and a team of human military planners faced Vorath's best commanders in a simulated fleet battle. The Cathari tactics were flawless, honed over millennia of actual warfare. They moved their virtual ships with precision and coordination that seemed almost mechanical. But the humans did something unexpected. Instead of trying to match the Cathari move for move, they embraced chaos. Feints that made no logical sense. Sacrifices that seemed wasteful. A commander named Sarah Chen led a suicide charge with half, her fleet drawing the Cathari into a pursuit that left their flanks exposed. When the simulation ended, the score was a draw. The Cathari had not won, and neither had the humans. But for a species as young as humanity, to fight the galaxy's greatest warriors to a standstill was unheard of. Vorath studied the results with an expression Alina could not read. "Unconventional," he said finally. "Messy. Unpredictable." He paused. "Effective." The second trial was endurance. Contestants would enter a gravity chamber that slowly increased the force pressing down upon them. The Cathari were built for harsh environments. Their exoskeletons could withstand pressures that would crush most species instantly. Marine. Sergeant Jackson Torres volunteered for humanity. He was a large man, heavily muscled, with a smile that never seemed to fade. When they strapped him into the gravity chamber, he winked at Alina. "Just like training back home," he said, "except the food is probably worse." The trial began. The gravity increased steadily, pressing down on both contestants like an invisible hand. Vorath stood straight and still, his armored body designed for exactly this kind of stress. Jackson's face reddened with effort, veins standing out on his forehead. He remained standing for hours past. 5, 6. At the 7-hour mark, a crack appeared in Vorath's chest plate. The Cathari commander grimaced, the first sign of weakness he had shown. But still he stood. At 4 hours, Jackson collapsed to one knee. His breathing was ragged, his muscles trembling. Every cell in his body was screaming for relief, but he did not surrender. He stayed there on one knee, refusing to fall completely. "Just getting comfortable," he gasped. At 6 hours, Jackson finally fell. Vorath lasted another 2 hours before his exoskeleton began to crack in earnest. And his commanders called the trial. But what the galaxy remembered was not that Jackson lost. It was what he did when they pulled him from the chamber, barely conscious, his body battered and exhausted. Looked up at Vorath and grinned. "Good workout," he said. "Same time tomorrow?" The final trial was single combat. When it was announced, Elena's team begged her to forfeit. There was no shame in it. Humanity had already performed beyond all expectations. A loss in combat would not diminish what they had achieved. But Jackson Torres was already stepping into the ring. Sergeant Elena called out, "You don't have to do this." Jackson looked back at her, his grin still in place despite the bruises covering his body. "Ambassador, with respect, yes I do. They need to see that we don't quit, no matter what." The combat lasted 90 seconds. Vorath was too fast, too strong, too experienced. He threw Jackson across the ring like a toy. He struck him with blows that would have killed a lesser being. Each time Jackson fell, the crowd expected him to stay down. Each time, he got back up. By the end, Jackson could barely stand. Blood ran from cuts on his face. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. But he raised his right fist and beckoned Vorath forward. "That all you got?" He wheezed. Vorath struck him one final time, and Jackson went down. This time he did not rise. The crowd was silent, waiting for the High Commander to declare victory. Instead, Vorath knelt beside his fallen opponent. He studied the human's face, the defiance that still burned in those eyes despite the beating he had taken. "Why?" Vorath asked quietly. "You knew you could not win. Why did you keep fighting?" Jackson coughed, tasting blood. "Because giving up is not what we do." Vorath stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. It was not the mocking laughter that had greeted humanity 3 days ago. It was something else entirely, something that sounded almost like joy. "I have fought 1,000 battles," Vorath said, rising to his feet. "I have faced the warriors of 100 species. None of them have shown me what you showed me today." He reached down and lifted Jackson to his feet, supporting the human's weight with surprising gentleness. "Humanity has passed the crucible," Vorath announced to the watching galaxy. "Not because they won, but because they refused to break." The arena erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted, some in protest, others in celebration. But Elena did not hear any of it. She was watching Jackson Torres lean against the greatest warrior in the galaxy. Barely conscious, but still smiling. They had done it. They had proven that humanity belonged. Now the real work could begin. In the weeks following the Crucible, everything changed. Not in dramatic explosions or sudden declarations, but in small moments that added up to something much larger. The galaxy was watching humanity with new eyes. And humanity was paying attention. Elena Vasquez had expected hostility from the elder races after her defiant speech. Instead, she found something more complex. The Velthari kept their distance, their crystalline forms dimming whenever human delegates entered a room. The Dominion Council issued formal statements expressing concern about traditional protocols being disrupted. But they did not act against Earth. Perhaps they were waiting to see what would happen next. Perhaps they simply did not know how to respond. It was the younger species who surprised Lena most. The first to reach out was the Palori, a race of small, six-limbed beings who had joined the Council only 800 years ago. By galactic standards, they were barely older than humanity. Their ambassador, a quick-moving creature named Tessith, requested a private meeting with Elena just days after the Crucible ended. "We watched your trial," Tessith said, her voice a rapid clicking that the translator rendered into slightly breathless speech. "We watched your sergeant refuse to fall. It reminded us of something we had forgotten." "What was that?" Elena asked. "That we were once like you, hungry, desperate, willing to fight against odds that logic said we could not overcome." Tessith's multiple eyes blinked in what might have been sadness. The elder races taught us patience. They taught us to wait our turn, to earn respect through centuries of quiet service. We forgot how to demand it. Over the following weeks, more species came forward. The Ven, whose homeworld had been exploited by elder races for millennia before they finally gained representation. The Crix, who had developed faster than light travel independently, only to be told their methods were inferior and must be abandoned. The Orith, the Keloni, the Mirth, and dozens of others who had spent centuries or more being told. They were not ready for a real voice. Alina listened to their stories. She learned their grievances, and slowly, carefully, she began to weave connections between them. But she was not stupid. Alina knew that the elder races would not simply allow humanity to build a coalition against their interests. The Dominion Council had subtle ways of punishing those who stepped out of line. Trade restrictions, diplomatic isolation, technology embargoes that could cripple a developing civilization. So Alina did not build a coalition against anyone. She built something else entirely. "We're going to share everything," she told her team during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "Every advancement we've made, every improvement on the technology the elder races gave us, we're going to give it away for free." Marcus Cole nearly choked on his coffee. "Ambassador, that's our leverage. If we give it away, we have nothing to bargain with," Wrong Alina replied. "If we hoard it, we become just another power playing the same games the elder races have played for millennia. But if we share it freely, we become something new. We become the species that helps others rise." The plan was audacious and risky. Earth's governments resisted at first. They had invested billions in developing improvements to alien technology, and simply giving it away seemed like madness. But Alina had a talent for persuasion, and eventually she won them over. The first gift was the improved fusion reactor. Humanity had taken the design the Velthri shared and made it 30% more efficient. The specifications were transmitted openly to every species that wanted them. With no conditions attached, the galaxy did not know how to respond. "There must be a trick," the Dominion speaker announced publicly. "No species shares its advantages without expectation of return. Humanity is playing a game we do not yet understand." But there was no trick. When the Palari asked for help adapting the reactor to their unique power systems, human engineers traveled to their homeworld and worked alongside them for months. When the Ven requested improvements to their medical technology, human doctors shared everything they knew. Word spread. Humanity was not hoarding its gains. Humanity was lifting others up. More species joined the informal network that was forming around Earth. They were not allies in any military sense. The elder races would have crushed any formal alliance that threatened their dominance. But trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were established. Human music, art, and entertainment spread through the younger civilizations like fire through dry grass. The Cathari hegemony, surprisingly, became one of humanity's strongest supporters. High Commander Vorith had been impressed by Jackson Torres's refusal to surrender, and that respect extended to all of humanity. Vorith did not formally ally with Earth, but he made it clear that anyone who moved against humanity would answer to him. Alina used every connection, every favor, every relationship she had built. She traveled constantly, meeting with delegates from species whose names humanity had only recently learned to pronounce. She listened more than she spoke. She asked questions instead of making demands. And she never, ever forgot that humanity was still vulnerable. The elder races began to take notice. Private communications arrived, warning Earth's government to remember its place. Economic pressure was applied to some of humanity's new partners. But each time, the network absorbed the blow and kept growing. "They're afraid," Tessith told Alina during one of their regular meetings. "I have never seen the elder races afraid before. They do not know how to fight this because it is not an attack. You are not conquering territory or stealing resources. You are simply making friends." Alina smiled, though she was exhausted. Months of constant travel and negotiation had taken their toll. "We learned something from our history on Earth. Empires built on force always crumble eventually. but connections built on mutual benefit can last forever. Behind the scenes, Elena's team was gathering intelligence. Which elder species were most resistant to change? Which had secret conflicts with each other? Which might be persuaded to support reform if the conditions were right? The information was not gathered for blackmail or manipulation, but for understanding. When the time came to push for real change, Elena wanted to know exactly where the pressure points were. The moment arrived sooner than expected. 1 year after Elena's first address to the council, a crisis erupted. A rogue faction of the Velthari attacked a convoy of Krik's trading vessels, killing hundreds. The Velthari denied responsibility, but evidence suggested elements within their government had sanctioned the attack. The council was convened to address the situation. And for the first time in centuries, the younger species demanded to be heard. Not just humanity, but the Palori, the Ven, the Kriks, and 40 other civilizations whose voices had been ignored for too long. This is what happens when some species are valued more than others, Elena declared to the assembled council. When injustice is allowed to fester because addressing it would be inconvenient for those in power, the elder races tried to restore order. They invoked tradition and protocol. But Elena had spent a year building something they could not simply dismiss. She had built a movement. "We are not here to tear down what you have created," Elena continued. "We are here to make it better, stronger, fairer. You can work with us. Or you can watch the galaxy you shaped crumble around you." The Dominion speaker stared at her, ancient eyes calculating. "And if we refuse?" Elena did not hesitate. "Then the species standing with us will chart our own course." Together, the chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what was at stake. The next words spoken would shape the future of galactic civilization. Elena waited, her heart pounding, and hoped that humanity's gamble would pay off. The silence in the council chamber stretched like a held breath. Elena Vasquez stood at the central podium, surrounded by the representatives of 47 species who had risen to stand with humanity. Behind them, the elder races watched with expressions that ranged from fury to calculation to something that might have been fear. The Dominion speaker was the first to respond. The ancient being moved slowly, each gesture carrying the weight of 10,000 years of authority. "You speak of reform as if it were a simple thing. But this council has maintained peace across the galaxy for longer than your species has possessed fire. Do you truly believe you understand the complexities you seek to change?" "No," Elena admitted. "I don't claim to understand everything. But I understand enough to know that what exists is not working for everyone. And I know that refusing to change because change is difficult is not wisdom. It's cowardice." A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. No one spoke to the elder races this way. But Elena was past caring about protocol. This was the moment everything had been building toward. The Kriks lost 300 lives last month because the Council's response protocols prioritize species. Based on their standing rather than their need, she continued, the Palori have waited 8 centuries for mining rights to resources in their own system, because the Velthari filed a claim first. The Ven cannot develop their own medical technology because Council regulations restrict them to approved methods that do not work for their biology. She gestured at the species standing behind her. These are not isolated problems. They are symptoms of a system designed to maintain the power of those who already have it at the expense of those who do not. The Velthari delegate pulsed with angry light. "You have been part of this galaxy for 30 years. You presume to lecture us on fairness." "Yes," Elena said simply. "Because sometimes it takes fresh eyes to see what has become invisible to everyone else." High Commander Voreth rose from his platform. The entire chamber tensed. The Cathari were the Council's enforcers, and where Voreth stood, his species stood. If he opposed humanity, the movement would collapse. But Voreth did not speak against Elena. Instead, he turned to face the elder races. "I have served this council for 300 years, he said. "I have fought its wars and enforced its laws. I believed in its principles. But the human speaks truth. We have become so focused on stability that we have forgotten justice. We punish those who challenge our rules, while ignoring those who abuse their privileges." He looked directly at the Velthari delegate. The attack on the Krix convoy was sanctioned by elements of the Velthari government. I have seen the evidence myself. And yet this council debates procedure while the dead receive no justice. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted accusations and denials. The Velthari representative blazed with furious light, denying everything. But the damage was done. One of the founding species had just been accused of murder by the galaxy's most respected. Warrior Elena raised her hand for silence. To her surprise, she got it. "We did not come here to destroy the council," she said. "We came to offer a path forward. A new charter that gives all species a meaningful voice. Reforms that prevent any civilization from using its position to exploit others. Transparency measures that hold everyone accountable, including the elder races." She activated a holographic display, showing the document her team had spent months preparing. It was comprehensive and detailed, covering everything from voting rights to trade regulations to military intervention protocols. "This is not a demand," Elena continued. "It is a proposal. We are willing to negotiate every point, to compromise where compromise is possible. But we are not willing to accept the status quo any longer." The Dominion speaker studied the proposal, ancient eyes scanning through pages of text. Finally, the being spoke. "And if we reject this proposal entirely?" Elena met the speaker's gaze without flinching. "Then the 47 species standing with us will withdraw from Council economic agreements. We have spent the past year building alternative trade networks and mutual defense pacts. We don't need you anymore." It was a bluff, mostly. The alternative networks were real, but they were fragile. A determined effort by the elder races could crush them. But Elena was betting that the elder races did not want to risk it. A fractured galaxy would benefit no one. For a long moment, no one spoke. The fate of civilizations hung in the balance. Then, unexpectedly, the Dominion speaker made a sound that might have been a sigh. "Humanity is not what we expected. When your species first reached the stars, we saw primitives playing with forces beyond their understanding. We expected you to destroy yourselves within a generation." The speaker paused, as if gathering strength for what came next. "We were wrong. Not about your limitations, but about your potential. You have accomplished in decades what took other species millennia. And you have done it not through conquest, but through connection." Ancient being turned to face the full council. "Perhaps it is time to remember that we too were young once. We too challenged the order of things and demanded our place. How can we deny to others what was once given to us?" One by one, the elder races began to speak. Some resisted, clinging to tradition and privilege, but more were willing to consider change. The Cathari supported the reform proposal openly. Several other founding species followed, their votes carrying enormous weight. The debate lasted for days. Elena barely slept, negotiating constantly, making concessions where necessary while holding firm on core principles. Tessith and the other junior species ambassadors worked alongside her, their expertise in council politics proving invaluable. In the end, the new charter was approved. Not unanimously, but by a clear majority. It was not everything Elena had hoped for. The reforms were more modest than the original proposal. But the fundamental principle was established. Every species, regardless of age or power, would have a meaningful voice in galactic governance. The signing ceremony was held in the same chamber where humanity had been laughed at 1 year before. Elena stood at the podium once more, but this time she was surrounded by allies. Jackson Torres was there, recovered from his injuries, grinning as always. Vorath stood nearby, his massive form somehow seeming less intimidating than before. Tessith and dozens of other ambassadors filled the platforms behind her. When Elena pressed her thumb to the document, formally committing humanity to the new charter, the chamber erupted in applause. This time, no one was laughing. Afterward, the Dominion speaker approached Elena privately. "You have changed more in 1 year than many species accomplish in 1,000. I confess I am uncertain whether to be impressed or terrified." Elena smiled. "Why not both?" The ancient being made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "Humanity will need to be watched carefully. You rise too fast. You push too hard. One day, you may push too far. Probably, Elena admitted. That's who we are. We don't know how to stop reaching for more. But I promise you this. When we reach, we'll try to lift others with us. She looked out at the dispersing crowd, at the representatives of dozens of species who had come together to reshape the galaxy. 1 year ago, humanity had been a joke. Now, they were part of something larger than themselves. It was not conquest. It was not dominion. It was something better. Alina thought about all the humans who had looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. The scientists and explorers and dreamers who had pushed humanity forward against every obstacle. They had not known what lay beyond those distant lights, but they had believed it was worth finding out. Now humanity was here, among the stars, making its mark on the universe. Not with weapons or threats, but with the same qualities that had carried them out of caves and across oceans: curiosity, determination, the absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The galaxy would never be the same. And Elena Vasquez, standing in the heart of galactic civilization, allowed herself a moment of pure joy. They had done it. They had proven that humanity belonged. Now came the hard part, living up to the promise they had made. But that was a challenge for tomorrow. Today she would celebrate. Today she would remember this feeling. Today humanity had taken its place among the stars.